Mitochondria and longevity. Before you just click off and go, what does that word mean? I haven't heard that since high school or junior high. You're going to want to lean in today because mitochondria and the function around that and how this helps how we age well has been a huge rabbit hole I've been going down. And I can't wait for this conversation today because this is something you want to lean in and learn. We're going to be talking about mitochondria function. We're going to be talking about urolithin A and how we can change how we age today. I can't wait for this conversation because I've got Jennifer Scheinman on, who is the perfect person to be talking with us today. Number one, she's in midlife like us. She's approaching 50. Not quite there yet, but she is right smack in midlife and all the things. She also is the combination of not only a registered dietitian, but also she has a master's degree in integrative and functional nutrition. This is a rare combination. And she also is the senior manager of nutrition affairs at Timeline. So she is the perfect person to be chatting with us today. Thank you so much for being here today, Jennifer.
Thank you so much for having me. And I love chatting sort of all things mitochondria. And especially like, as you mentioned, like I'm going through sort of midlife and perimenopause, and just this nutrient, which we're going to talk about, urolithin A, I think just can play such a substantial role, not only in how we kind of go through this phase in our life, but then how we're setting ourselves up so that the second half of our life is just as powerful, if not even more powerful than the first half of our life.
So I want to back up a minute. When you were in school and you were learning about nutrition, or the first time you learned about mitochondria, like what was your thoughts with that? Do you even remember the first time learning about it?
Oh, yeah. I mean, like most people, I probably learned about it, I think, in high school biology. And I was always a bit of like a biology nerd. So I kind of thought it was cool, but I get that most people did not think it was cool. But it was a very almost like simplistic thing, right? Like where we kind of had to memorize like the Krebs cycle and how that like might even people don't remember, right? And even when I went through nutrition, you know, getting my undergraduate degree in nutrition and then getting my master's, it was really all about like energy output, and you had to memorize these pathways and like promptly forget what the mitochondria was, right? Like I joke a lot that people have post-traumatic stress disorder from like biology. And so you get this like cringe when you hear mitochondria, and I hope we can change that even a little bit today without making people feel like they have to open up their biology textbooks and like understand these complex pathways. That's not really critically important.
I'm going to go really basic with you because I'm going to assume a lot of my listeners don't remember or understand what it is. And the reason I'm going to do this and go really basic here is in preparing for this conversation and for preparing for what I've been trying to learn for myself, my own knowledge around mitochondria and how that changes as we age and the importance of it. I went on a search listening to lots of podcasts and going down rabbit holes, and I couldn't find anyone that explained this to me simply. So this is really important to me to get this across because I think most people tune this part out. So we're going to go basic here. So for those of you that are advanced science nerds, you may not like this, but for those of you that really want to understand, we're going to dive in. Jennifer, help us, tell us what mitochondria actually is. And if you can explain it as basic as you can, please help us.
Well, I think it's almost at this point like a reflex where you think mitochondria, powerhouse of the cell, right? And the reason for that is in their most basic function, they are what create the energy our cells need to thrive. So I like to picture them almost as like these little mini factories that live inside our cells. And our cells actually will have potentially thousands of them, depending on which type of cell. And what they do, what these factory does, is it starts with raw materials. And that's actually the food that we eat. And it combines that with the air that we breathe, and it goes through this complex assembly line with, you know, different ingredients and different key workers on there. And out at the other end comes what's called ATP. I don't think anyone needs to remember that, but that's this cellular energy that our cells will use, whether it's a brain cell, whether it's a muscle cell, whether it's an immune cell. They're all using that same energetic currency that our mitochondria produce.
Okay. So when we hear about mitochondria declining as we age, is that an accurate statement, or what does that actually mean?
Yeah, absolutely. So just like any other factory, through wear and tear, it becomes damaged. And so our mitochondria do become damaged with age. They become dysfunctional, which literally just means that they're not producing energy the way that they once did when they were younger, better, healthier, newer mitochondria.
So what gets that thing confusing in midlife is we hear everything affects our energy, right? Like we literally hear everything. So you're like, oh, you're in perimenopause, or you're in menopause, that affects your energy. You're getting older, it affects your energy. It's like, it's this constant thing. Would you say that what you're talking about is kind of in the baseline before all of that? Is one caused by the other? Help us with that.
Yeah. So, I mean, our bodies are very, very complex. So it's not so simple as like A plus B equals C,
Yeah.
right? Multiple things that are happening inside our bodies. But yes, absolutely. Mitochondrial decline is part of that, as are our changing hormones as we start to go through perimenopause. So, it makes sense, right? If you have less energy coming out of your cells because your mitochondria are not working as they once did, you're going to feel less energetic. And that's going to impact, that's one of the first things that I think we can feel in terms of like, as our mitochondria start to decline, we start to feel that energy drop. Now this is sort of probably a more complex conversation for a later date, but there is definitely also a relationship between the mitochondria and our estrogen levels. I literally just learned this like maybe 6 months
tell
or
us.
a
Let's
year
dive in.
ago,
I want to hear about this. So
that first of all, there's estrogen receptors on our mitochondria, and our mitochondria play a critical role. So we talked about that they're powerhouse of the cell. They do several other important things, which again, deeper dive into mitochondria. But one of the other things they do is they play a role in our steroid hormone production. So that includes testosterone, estrogen, right? So it makes perfect sense that as the mitochondria are starting to decline, as we have less estrogen, all of this is making up for a pretty ugly, storm of fatigue, muscle, brain, all the things that we start to feel as we get older.
Okay, I want to go a lot deeper there, but before I do, I want to back up a little bit. And genetically, is there a difference with people? Like, do we all start kind of with the same mitochondrial function, or is this something we're also born with, different makeups here? How does that start?
That's a great question. I would have to imagine we are all unique individuals and we all have our own unique genetic makeup. So I would suspect that there is some genetic difference between people. Also, your environment, mitochondria can be susceptible to damage just through like poor diet, environmental toxins, things like Lyme disease, mold toxicity. All of those things are going to impact your mitochondria. So we aren't all necessarily like on the same playing field, depending on sort of what's happening in our lives. And I would absolutely bet, although I don't know this for a fact, but I would bet that genetics certainly would play a role in how our mitochondria work.
Yeah. So the reason I'm asking that, and I just want to, I'm going to be transparent with everyone here, is I was wondering why some things that are designed to help with mitochondria function were not feeling good in me. So for example, I would jump to something like NAD. That's what it's supposed to do. And anytime I would try NAD, it would make me extremely anxious, like in any form of NAD. And I couldn't figure that out. But like if I would sit in front of a red light or have CoQ10 or like that would not make me feel that. So in DNA testing, I saw, or I was told how that was interpreted is that I don't have the DNA for good mitochondria to begin with. So I was trying to link a connection there. I don't know if there is or isn't, but I'm wondering, and we're gonna go back down to the middle ground where we're talking about, but I'm wondering if that is a big reason people feel different on different supplements or different things based on that.
Yeah, I mean, I personally don't feel great on NAD either. But I think, I mean, absolutely how we metabolize these substances, how they impact our mitochondria. Another cool mitochondria little factoid is that mitochondria actually have their own DNA, which is separate than the DNA that's in the nucleus of our cell. And another cool shout out to women, it comes down like pretty much exclusively from our moms. So there is your own DNA inside each mitochondria. And so, I mean, it doesn't surprise me that we all are going to have our unique genetic code, which is what makes us each us.
Now, how do we can we prevent mitochondria decline? And then also, can we repair it? And what are the layers? Like, how do you start with that?
So you can slow it down, right? Just like anything in aging, you can't necessarily stop it or reverse it. I know there are a lot of people in sort of the longevity community and the biohacking community that are saying like, I'm stopping aging. And I don't think the science is there yet, but there are things that we can do that absolutely can slow down what's happening inside our cells. So our bodies are so amazing, right? Like we have these innate rejuvenating capabilities inside our body. So I don't know if your listeners are familiar with like fasting at all, right? They've probably heard this term autophagy, right? And that is this like cellular recycling process that happens. Our mitochondria have their own special form of recycling. It's called mitophagy. Now, again, like the mitochondria, as they start to get used and worn down, like they send out this signal that says, hey, I'm breaking down. And so our body can recognize that and do this recycling process. Unfortunately, that recycling process also starts to slow down as we get older. So we're starting to get this like buildup of dysfunctional mitochondria. We have this slowdown of the recycling process, but there are things that we can do to trigger that recycling process. And probably the two best, most accessible ones are exercise, which, we should be doing for not just our mitochondria, for everything, and and calorie restriction or fasting, which may or may not really be for everyone, but that is another way to help stimulate this recycling process. So we're thinking about just sort of like the foundational things.
Yeah.
Exercise for sure. Probably one of the best things you can do for your mitochondria.
And now this is where it gets confusing after that. So yes, fasting, yes, exercise. And then it seems like everything out there now is talking about mitochondria. And I don't know if it's just because they've jumped on this because that's so associated with longevity, but it's very confusing for people. So like we'll hear things like red light helps with that. Sauna helps with that. There's like no shortage of things that help with it, right? Devices. And then we look at the supplement line. This is where it gets really confusing. And this is where I really leaned in on what with MitoPure and Urolithin A, because this made a lot of sense to me. So I want to talk specifically about food and supplements for a minute and like what happens with that in our body. So when you hear things like CoQ10 or even eating pomegranate seeds, is that the beginning stages of kind of helping with mitochondria?
So here's how I think about mitochondrial health, right? And how you can do different things to target mitochondrial health. I kind of throw it into 3 buckets, right? And again, let's picture that factory for a second. So if you need more cellular energy, you can build new factories, right?
Okay.
If you have more factories, more energy. And that's the scientific term of that is biogenesis. You can make those factories run better or help like protect those factories, right? So like add more workers or better ingredients or, just keep the factory in tip-top shape. Or the third way is when those factories start to break down, because it doesn't matter like how perfect you take care of them, they're still going to break down. You can remove those damaged factories because you only have so much real estate to build new ones.
Yeah.
You can remove them and then use those materials to recycle and create new factories. So when I'm thinking about the ways to target mitochondrial health, I'm actually putting them in those buckets of how to help, right? So we talked about NAD, for example. So I think one of the things that NAD is great for is for helping to build new mitochondria and even maybe protecting and make the mitochondria work a little bit better. Yeah. So CoQ10, that's another example of something that is really like protective of the mitochondria and helps to shuttle along, that assembly line of energy production.
So both CoQ10 and NAD on different levels would help build new. That's okay. Now, where does the cleanup part come in?
Yeah, so that's really the unique place where there's really only in humans that's been proven 3 things that will do that. So I talked already about calorie restriction / fasting. I kind of lump those into one. Exercise. And then the only external molecule that we have found, again, proven in humans to do that recycling process is this molecule called Urolithin A.
Okay.
So that's really what makes it unique. And when I'm thinking about mitochondrial protection and how to make them function the best that they can, I want to clean out the junk drawer, right? You want to get rid of that damaged mitochondria and then build newer ones and then protect the ones that you have, right? So that to me is the foundational piece, something like Urolithin A, and then layering on some of these other things like red light therapy, like, CoQ10, NAD, if you tolerate that, I think they all can make a really beautiful mitochondria sort of support package.
But I want to make sure I'm fully understanding. What is the main benefit of cleaning out before you're building new?
Well, you only have so much real estate, right? Okay. So if you are continuing to build this collection of dysfunctional mitochondria, they actually can start damaging other mitochondria. Yeah, like, I mean, think about like old, I know I'm sort of beating a dead horse with this factory analogy, but this is how I like to think of things. Like you have a bunch of like broken down factories, like gunking up the system and they're ugly to look at. Or like think about taking out your trash. If you leave your trash there, it collects, it smells bad, right? You need to get rid of that in order to have an environment that healthy mitochondria can thrive.
I might be jumping the gun here and really connecting the dots in a weird way. So just tell me if I'm wrong here, but I'm trying to. Would this be kind of an oversimplified way of why some people don't like NAD or don't feel good on it when it's like you're almost building? Would it be because you're almost building too fast without cleaning out? Or am I jumping to a conclusion there?
No, I follow your thought process. And to be honest, I don't really know.
Okay.
I don't really know. I don't know if it's like, because like I also like get like rapid heartbeat and like lightheaded when I take NAD. I don't feel great on it. I don't know, to be honest. I haven't like dug into it as much.
I mean, I'm certainly not a doctor or scientist here, but I'm just as I'm thinking and wondering, I'm wondering if there's something to do with that, because that would make sense. It's almost like if you eat a bunch of garbage, then you try to put a healthy salad on top of it, your stomach doesn't know what to do with it all. It's like, just, So if you have unhealthy mitochondria and you try to jump to some extreme biohacking thing, I would imagine that might be part of why that happens. I don't know. It's just Natalie's hypothesis.
Yeah, I don't know. And I don't know if like science knows either. They might, just because I don't know it clearly doesn't mean that. But yeah, it's definitely an interesting thing to think about.
So what seems super interesting to me about Urolithin A is it's, and again, a different thought process here. I like that you say it's cleaning out and it's helping to build new, but it's also taking things that we maybe couldn't get enough of from diet or anything and helping you convert faster? Is that, help me understand that?
Yeah, so I think what you're asking, and if not, we'll ask again. But so let's talk about what it actually is,
Okay.
urolithin A is, and like where you would find it in nature. So like other nutrients that come, or it's different, I should say, than other nutrients
Hmm.
that we get in food, like vitamin D, for example, right? Or that's a bad example because you get that mostly from the sun. But vitamin C, right? You eat vitamin
Okay.
C, your body absorbs it and utilizes
Yep.
it. Urolithin A is a little bit different. So to tie in back to the pomegranates, there are certain nutrients inside the pomegranate that we actually can't utilize ourselves. And our gut actually utilizes it for us. So the gut,
Hmm.
most people are very familiar with the critical importance of gut health, right? But one of the things that is so cool about what happens inside our gut, right? We house these microbes, these little bacteria. And I like to joke that we sort of give them room and board. They get to live inside our
Okay.
gut and they actually get to eat and digest things we can't digest. So fiber is a perfect example of that. But some polyphenols, that are these types of plant compounds, for example, that are in pomegranates, we
Hmm.
can't actually digest those. Our gut microbiome will do that for us, and they will pay us back
Okay.
with these, they're called postbiotics. So urolithin A is an example of that. So our gut is actually taking pomegranates, things that are in
Right.
pomegranates, and converting it into urolithin A for us. The problem is that most people don't have a healthy gut microbiome, or
Mm.
we're not eating enough of those dietary precursors to get enough urolithin A. So I would imagine like hundreds of years ago when we were eating, a much more natural diet and,
Sure.
we had much healthier guts, like we probably had tons of urolithin A in our bloodstream all the time. But we've sort of unfortunately like evolved away from that and we don't have that nutrient in our gut. But to your point, like, does it make things in your body work better? When your mitochondria are healthier, like pretty much everything in your body works.
Yeah, that makes
Yeah.
sense. So when people hear about urolithin A, like when I first heard about it, my automatic thought was, oh, I'll just have more pomegranate. But what you're saying is then you're really banking on that your gut's like super healthy and you're going to have enough of it and it's going to convert to this postbiotic. Because what is a postbiotic? People hear prebiotic or what is a postbiotic?
Yeah, so probiotic, those are the bacteria
Hmm.
that live inside your gut. Prebiotic, those are the fuel, basically food for
Okay.
your gut microbiome. So I'd mentioned fiber, polyphenols. And then
Uh-huh.
postbiotic is this sort of newer term, is basically what your gut microbiome is making that is beneficial to you. So it takes those prebiotics, it digests them and metabolizes them, and then it pays us in these postbiotics. So a
Got
couple
it.
other examples like that many people don't even realize, like some of your B vitamins and vitamin K, like your gut helps to produce that as well. You can get that obviously through your diet as well, but your gut can make it for you as well. And we're just learning, like I think it's like Dr. Mark Hyman says, like your gut is like a complete untapped pharmacy. Like we don't
Totally.
even know all these cool metabolites that our microbiome is producing that we're benefiting from.
So it's fascinating how much
So
there. That's what, and for years people just ignoring gut health, which is now kind of I feel like what's happening with the mitochondria topic. Like that's the topic that we're all hearing about
totally.
now and diving
Yeah, I
into.
constantly say, like, I think that mitochondrial health is the new gut health in the
Yes.
sense that, 10 years ago, the science around the gut was like, it was there, but people weren't
Hmm.
really talking about it or paying attention to it. And that's where we are. Like, mitochondrial health has been linked to almost like so many diseases of like aging, chronic conditions. The science is there. Like, we're now learning about all these great tools that we have to support our mitochondria, but we need people like you who have these amazing audiences to start educating, like, hey, you don't have to be scared of the mitochondria. Like, you don't need
Yeah.
to like tune out every time you hear that. You also don't need to like be a nerd and know every detail, but you do need to be aware of what they're doing inside your body
Totally.
and how you can support them.
Well, I think what happens, honestly, like we learn in school, you learn when you're younger, it's not affecting you yet, or that you know of. But as soon as you're actually aging and changing and seeing the changes in your body and how you're thinking and your focus and your energy and all that, then it gets really interesting. And you're like, wait a minute. So then it's tying back to that. So that's where I think, because midlife audience is it's like the fastest growing audience, obviously,
For sure.
honestly. And then now that's why I think this is coming up. And then the whole idea behind biohacking and longevity and all of that is where this gets important. Talk to me about, okay, so urolithin, why, if your body's already converting to that, why
Yeah.
do we take urolithin A?
Well, because most of our bodies are not. So really only about, there's some studies have been done, really only about 30 to 40% of the population even has the right gut microbiome to make
Wow.
urolithin A. And, there are some ways that it's not like for consumers to have, but there are some tests where we can test like levels of urolithin A. And like we've had some of like really like doctors that are known for like doing everything for gut health, right? And
Sure.
they have tested whether they can produce urolithin A and like they don't produce meaningful quantities of it despite doing all the things for gut health. So you can't really necessarily rely on your gut. And then
Hmm.
even for those who can make it, you would have to drink a ton of like pomegranate juice,
Yep.
berries, nuts every single day to have a concentration of urolithin in your blood that's really going to do any
Mm.
meaningful
So having your
impact.
tablespoon of pomegranate seeds is not going to do that.
No,
Having,
they're
and if
great.
I'm hearing you correctly, even taking any polyphenol, if I'm hearing correctly, you would have to have the right gut environment to convert. Is that accurate?
Specifically for urolithin A. There are definitely some other benefits of the
Yep.
polyphenols, of pomegranates, like so
But to
not
make urolithin
discounting
A, you would need.
bingo.
Okay, that makes sense. So when you bypass and you take, and by the way, one of the supplements I've added into my regimen is MitoPure, which is urolithin A by Timeline Nutra, and that's what I sort of found as this middle ground. As okay, I can't do the extreme.
Yeah.
I'm doing the exercise and the red light and all that, but like, what's this middle ground? So I have been playing with taking this, and I know it's my understanding you do need to take it for 30 days, 60 days for to really feel, or is it something instant it would start working?
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. So in today's like Amazon Prime world where people want
Yeah.
things to work tomorrow, like this is not, I don't think anything is really going to be that. So the clinical studies that have been done on MitoPure specifically, which is this clinically validated brand of urolithin A. So at the bare minimum, after 4 months, what we did was we did a
Okay.
muscle biopsy where we
Which
actually
is
took.
painful.
Yeah, yeah. And that's really like the gold standard of how to measure mitochondrial function. So like if any of your listeners are wondering like, well, how do I know if my mitochondria are functioning? I want to get tested.
Hmm.
Fortunately, it's not a great way to do that.
Mm-mm.
So in clinical trials, we do these painful muscle biopsies. We look at like genes of mitochondrial function. We look actually at mitochondrial function under like super high tech like microscopes. And so we see it takes about 4 weeks for that process of the
Okay.
recycling to happen, right? And then once you have these newer functioning mitochondria, it's going to take a little bit of time also for them to be shooting out more energy for your cells in order to you to actually translate that into a feeling.
Yes. So you
So
shouldn't take, you're not going to take one and have this big energy burst. It's like you
no.
shouldn't, if done right, your body wouldn't even feel it. And you just start, what would happen? You would start getting gradually stronger. Like what's kind of the sequence of what starts to happen?
Yeah, so everybody is different. I think what I'll share my personal
Yeah,
experience and then what we hear very often. So I think the first thing I personally noticed was like I don't really get sore at the gym anymore.
that would be
Um,
amazing.
yeah,
That's an
yeah,
amazing
so
benefit.
much that like I work out with a personal trainer twice a week and I don't really like pay attention. Like I do when I lift on my own, obviously I know what weights I'm doing, but like I don't always know, like he just kind of like hands me stuff. I
Yeah.
don't always pay attention. And I had even said to him once, like, are you like giving me heavier weights? Like I'm not sore anymore. Like, do we need to work
Yeah.
harder? And he's like, no, like you're progressing amazingly. So that was the first thing. And then the second thing, like I had seen somebody that I hadn't seen in like, maybe like, I don't know, 4 or 5 months. And they were just like, how are you feeling? Because I'd been complaining a lot about like some fatigue issues lately. And I was like, now that you ask me that, I'm like, I'm feeling really good. Like, so it's almost this like subtle type of energy where, I don't know, I think anyone who's in perimenopause will get this. Like you feel like yourself again. That
Yeah.
like crashing, burning fatigue of like 3 p.m. coming and like feeling like I need to take a nap. Like I don't really get that anymore. Yeah, I might have a small dip in energy, but I get through my day. I work out after work. So I get through my day, I work out, I take the dog on a long walk, I cook dinner. Like I do all the things without crashing and burning. So that was my experience. And so I think energy is one that we hear for sure. The other thing, strength, and that's what our clinical studies have shown too, is, and this was at 4 months, so it takes some time, but we start to see significant improvements in muscle strength with 500 milligrams after 4 months.
Why is that about the muscle strength? I'm having a hard time wrapping my brain around that one. Like it makes sense to me with like creatine or working out harder, adding more protein, but help me with that one.
Yeah, well, because the mitochondria are producing the energy for that muscle cell to perform. So
Okay.
if that muscle cell has more cellular energy because you've now replaced those dysfunctional mitochondria, the muscle is going to be stronger.
Wow.
So yeah.
Which is huge to me because my biggest, if I were to give like one hack for aging well, like the biggest hack for aging well is you have to add muscle and retain muscle. Like you have to. And if you don't, we start getting into not only our metabolism starts, we have issues with less muscle. We start having more pain. We also lose bone. So there's so many things there. So anytime there's an idea or something that's going to help with that strength component, so we can lift more, so we can do more, that's huge for me. So that's honestly, that's like the biggest thing I started leaning in on here is like, wait a minute, because what you hear from midlife women so many times is either they didn't work out enough and now they're like trying to fight the time building it, right? And it's harder. It starts feeling harder as we age, or they have more pain, injuries, recovery time. So it makes it harder to even do that there. So anything that's going to help with that strength is like, I'm leaning in for that.
Totally with you on that. I think like one of my biggest regrets is like I didn't do enough strength training when I was younger. Like I was a cardio girl, like stick me on the elliptical for like, an hour at a time. And we now recognize like the critical importance for women specifically to have healthier muscles, to be strong, to have more muscle mass. And I'm with you. Anything that we can do outside obviously of like a high protein diet and strength training is really going to level up our game.
Is there anyone that should not take Urolithin A? Is there any, like, is this one of those things you want to ask your doctor first, or is this a pretty gentle supplement? Like, what are your thoughts there, and what is there anything that you shouldn't feel if you do it?
Yeah, I mean, the like conservative person in me feels like everybody should talk to their doctor about every supplement before they take something, right? But this is a really, really safe supplement. So in clinical trials, there were no significant differences between placebo and the MitoPure. Now that it's been on the market for almost 5 years with thousands and thousands and thousands of people, we don't really have any concerns with side effects interacting with like other nutrients, interacting with other medications. So it's very, very safe for people to take. I think that's like the first thing is that like I think of this as like a foundational piece, like a vitamin D and a multivitamin and an omega. Like this is kind of like a foundational piece of health.
And do you just take them first thing in the morning? How do you personally take them?
Our studies all looked at taking it first thing in the morning. You can take it with or without food. It doesn't matter. Your body will absorb it either way. When I wear my clinician hat though, like my dietitian hat, like the best time of day to take it is when you're really going to remember to take it. So if like you take everything at night,
I love when you say that. I love that. Thank you for saying that, because it gets confusing with so many different supplements and things. That's like take this an hour and a half away from food. Take this one 30 minutes away from
I know. Like I'm actually going through a little bit of like a gut cleanse right now, and I'm like, there's something I'm supposed to always take like right before I eat, and I'm like, oh, I forgot again. Like
I went down this path with peptides. I'm like, can't remember all, like this one's an hour before lunch. This one's 30 minutes before. Like it's so confusing.
So this one, take it when it's convenient for you, but it's best to take it around the same time every day so that you have a steady state in your body. So even though it's giving your cells energy, it's not stimulating. So like even if you took it right before bed, it's not gonna impact your sleep.
Oh, that's good to know. Yeah. Okay, got it. So if it's in your head to take it first thing in the morning or before you work out or whatever it is, that's when you take it.
That's the best time, but just be consistent. So like if you don't work out every day, like what's your trigger to remember to take it on the day that you don't work out?
But okay, makes sense. Okay, what are some, like, have you had some interesting benefits you weren't expecting that you noticed and you kind of linked back to this?
I think just like, as I said, just sort of this like general, just like feeling like myself again. And the studies that are coming out. So like if anybody here likes to like nerd out on scientific research and you went to like PubMed or Google Scholar and you put in Urolithin A, you are going to see preclinical. So like in animals and in cell models, like studies looking at so many things like immune aging and brain aging, and that's all going to be translated like over the next couple of years into human studies. So I think there's just like so much potential for this molecule outside of just like muscle. I think even one of the areas that we're looking at is like reproductive aging, right?
Really?
Yeah. Well, the fastest aging organ of a woman's body is our ovaries. Lucky us.
Oh my gosh, can you imagine? That would be wild if all of a sudden you can like delay menopause, or you can.
Yeah. I mean, that's like, not based on any science. It's just like a old girl chat. Like like we know that the later you go in through menopause, like that's healthier. And so it's sort of like my little like prayer that like, God, wouldn't this be cool if this helps to keep my ovaries pumping out a little bit longer?
Yeah.
But even to help women who might be wanting to start having children later in life, right? This might be something that can help to support that. So that's where the research is starting to go. It's promising in preclinical data. I just can't say yet that like that's for sure what's going to happen in humans.
Is this this why you kind of leaned into, because like, you've got your own, you don't need to be with a company, right? Like you're a dietitian, you have your master's in nutrition. You're so on point with this stuff. I'm assuming this is why you kind of leaned into that, is because you saw this science. And
You're absolutely right. So I actually like left my private practice. Like I
wow.
was sort of balancing private practice and doing like some consulting work for brands. And there's a couple of reasons that I joined this. Like number one, I think this nutrient is so powerful. I think
Hmm.
mitochondria in general, they're like the next frontier
Yes,
in human health.
I agree.
And I think getting that message out is just like, like it's kind of like where probiotics were like 5 years ago. Like this is just such an opportunity to help people. And Timeline specifically, who are the makers of MitoPure, they are like no other supplement brand I've ever been aware of. And there's a few other ones I think that are like leveling up, but they did like 15 years of research on this
I
molecule
know, it's crazy.
before there was even a product. So that's so rare.
I
Like to
love that. It
see,
is rare.
yeah, to see like published, peer-reviewed, double-blind, placebo-controlled trials, like in top-tier medical journals, things like JAMA, things like Cell and Nature. You rarely, if ever, see that. And so I was like, this is something that's so different and such a cool opportunity for me
Hmm.
to like join in and do. So yeah, I mean, absolutely. Like at this point in my career, there's a lot of things that I can do. And I think this is something that's just so exciting and so much potential to help people that that's why I came on board.
No, obviously for midlife women, we're like really thinking about longevity, and we're really thinking about how we're aging, and we want our energy, we want the muscle, we all that. So it makes total sense for us. Does this also make sense for us to tell our kids or our, so like who else should everybody be taking Urolithin A, or do you think this is more for midlife, or what's your thoughts around that?
Yeah, so I don't think like kids need to be worrying
Hmm.
about this yet, and even like early 20s, I don't know if people really need to be worrying about it yet. I guess it also depends like if you have anything that's like really like Lyme or long COVID or something that might actually just like
Sure.
really damage your mitochondria. But for like the average healthy person, I think a great place to start thinking about it though is in your 30s,
Hmm.
because that is when I sort of joke about this, like the warranty runs out, right? Like
Yeah.
all of a sudden, like you start feeling it. You
Oh
feel
yeah.
your age as you start to get into your like early and mid 30s. So I think the thought process is if there's things that you could do earlier on, you're going to be in a better place than when you
Totally.
enter your 50s, when you enter your 60s, when you enter your 70s, right? That's why we as like midlife women are doing all the things because we want to age differently than maybe our parents aged. But I also think it's not too late. Like we've seen positive benefits in our clinical trials in older adults too. In fact, one
Yep.
study, our chief medical officer loves to tell this story. This woman, so the studies are blinded, so we don't know who is taking what. And there was this like little like 90-year-old lady, and she was like a big time gardener, and she would constantly like every time there was a follow-up, she was like, I know I'm on the like MitoPure and not the placebo because she's like, I feel awesome in the garden. I'm like being much more productive.
Hmm.
And then, lo and behold, she was on it, right? And so
Oh
like
yeah.
that's so impactful that
I
like in
love
your
hearing that kind of study.
90s,
Yeah.
yeah, like in your 90s, like you're getting a better quality of life. So I think this is something like I personally like I have my parents on it, right? Like
Oh,
they're
that's
in their
amazing.
mid
Yeah.
to late 70s. Like I want them to still be able to be as active as possible, right? And to be as healthy as possible. So I think there's a really like I think like the sweet spot of people who are getting interested in this is sort of like if you're not a biohacker, you're like a midlife person where you're just
Yes.
really starting to like feel the wear and tear and you want to do all the things that you can to slow down the aging process. But I think it's a great thing for people who are older adults too.
So another thing that's coming up for me, again, Natalie's hypothesis, not anything I was
Yeah.
told, but I'm thinking that we went through this whole in the last like 10 years of realizing there's this huge connection with blood sugar and dementia and Alzheimer's, right? Like if you have almost calling it the type 3 diabetes, right? You have too high blood sugar. And then we spent time with how that's all connected to the gut. But I'm wondering if this will be another huge thing in prevention of dementia and Alzheimer's. I mean, it would make sense to me because that's how you're keeping your brain engaged, right? I don't
Yeah,
know.
absolutely, absolutely. And that's actually being actively studied right now. So,
Oh, that's good.
mitochondrial dysfunction is highly linked to neurodegenerative diseases, things like
Okay.
Alzheimer's and Parkinson's. And there's the Buck Institute of Aging is like probably, at least in the US, if not the world, is like one of the top research institutions of aging and like the biology of how we age and many diseases of aging. And they are actively studying Urolithin A. They've done some amazing preclinical trials and they're
Sure.
starting to look at it in, in human levels as well as what can it do for our brains to help keep our brains healthier as we age.
I have a lot more questions, but I got to say, without even trying, you've like totally convinced me that I need to be taking this every single day. Like, what the heck? Like, I
It's
don't see any reason why I wouldn't. Like, that doesn't make any, it wouldn't make any sense not to. It's like an insurance policy. Why would you
it,
not?
that's kind of how I feel about it, is just like, many people will actually notice the benefit, like they will feel
Yeah,
it. But even for people who are like, I don't know if I'm feeling anything, like I personally, like people tell me like they take magnesium and it like makes them sleep like a baby. Like I don't feel
totally.
anything when I take my magnesium, but I still take it because I know that
Well,
I'm
yeah.
probably not getting enough in my diet. And that's how I think about Urolithin A. Even if you don't feel it, it is still
Mhm.
doing its magic inside.
Yeah, you've challenged me on that because I am that person that like I want to feel things. So like anything I take, like and I've talked about before, like the minerals I use, like I feel it. So to me, I've sort of trained myself that I got to feel it. But this is making a lot of sense to me that you don't necessarily have to, and maybe you even shouldn't, and then it's still going to be an insurance and a benefit. That's amazing.
Obviously, like you want to feel something, right?
No, but I
I think
mean the right
most
away thing,
people.
the right away thing I'm talking about, like
Oh yeah,
the
yeah. You
instant.
wouldn't feel, yeah. I have had people tell me they feel things right away. I suspect that's placebo,
Yeah.
which great. I mean, if you feel something, you feel something.
No,
Awesome.
I'm thinking that's what
But
happened to me. I told her as soon as I got my first bottle of MitoPure and I took it, I felt, but now I'm realizing what that was. Okay, I'm
yeah.
gonna just call myself out here. I have a whole story around that NAD gives me anxiety. Like I've had this whole story. So when I took it, I was almost like, I'm gonna feel this one too, right?
Yeah.
So I initially thought that was connected, but the more I've taken it, that has not been the case. So
Mm.
I think that placebo thing is very real. Like you think something's going to affect you a certain way, and it absolutely, you can feel that. But I hear what you're saying. And the more I went down, I'm like, that's not what that was. And this is an insurance policy. And I want to give this several months and notice the difference. So I think that's incredible. Here's some things I didn't ask you that I want to make sure I don't skip over. How are we hurting our mitochondria in everyday life? Like take away, like if we're not taking urolithin A, we're not repairing, like what is contributing to the decline of it?
Yeah, I mean, the same things that are contributing to the decline of our overall health. So poor diet, again, you think of the factories as like
Mhm.
they need quality raw materials to start. They need things that are can protect it, like antioxidants and all the vitamins and minerals that we get through food, not exercising
Okay.
or sleep. I mean, I forgot if I said this earlier, like one of the other cool things that the mitochondria does is like they actually play a role in circadian rhythm. They can actually produce some
Mm,
melatonin, right?
that's
So
amazing.
smoking, environmental toxins. I mean, all the things that are just sort of like prevalent in our
Okay.
world that are sort of unhealthy.
So there's the bad diets, the processed food, the sugars, the alcohol,
Oh
the
yeah, yeah.
tobacco, all of that would help
All of that. Yeah.
rapidly decline mitochondria, I would imagine.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
What we didn't talk about is mitochondria and skin health. Can we talk about that a little bit? Because I know
Yeah.
that you even have like a topical supplement, and I want to understand more about that.
Yeah. So again, it all comes down to mitochondrial function. And other than our red blood cells, another little mitochondria factoid, and every cell in our body other than our red blood cells requires mitochondria for energy. So when those mitochondria start to become dysfunctional, they're not producing energy the same way. It doesn't matter if it's your muscles or your brain, like we were talking about,
Hmm.
your skin as well is going to be dependent on healthy mitochondria. So what was discovered, and I believe the story went that like, when you asked about like surprising benefits of taking urolithin A,
Yeah.
people were reporting that their skin looked better. And that
Yours,
wasn't even.
I'm looking at you like your skin looks
Thank
perfect.
you. Thank you. So we started to study it. And while it's like a completely different mechanism of action, I think like your audience will relate to this. Like vitamin C, for example, we have to eat it. It has an impact in our body.
Hmm.
You apply it topically and you get a very localized, potent effect on the skin. And that's the same thing with MitoPure, right? Or urolithin A. You can eat it
Okay.
and it's going to have a systemic effect. But when you apply it to your skin cells are going to absorb it and it's going to be really potent and powerful in the skin. And so what we see is that when you have better mitochondrial function, all the genes that regulate collagen organization and production, like they're all upregulated. So more
Hmm.
collagen. Other thing that I think is really cool about it is we did this study where we actually exposed the skin to UV light, right? So that's like the number one thing that ages our
Who
skin.
volunteered for that study? Not me.
Yeah, I know, I know. I would be like, no, thank you. And I think it was on
Mm-mm.
like the back of the arm or like your
Okay.
back. It wasn't on your face. But and then we applied either just like a placebo cream or the urolithin A cream, and all the like inflammation and the damage that happened from the sun exposure was resolved more quickly.
Whoa.
So what happens is when you apply it topically, it attacks like the cellular reasons why our skin ages, which is the mitochondria, but also that external factor of why we age, this, the sun damage. And this is still like I wouldn't replace a sunblock with this. Like I still use my sunscreen.
Totally.
But when you think about like the other things that we use in our sort of skincare regimen, like retinol or tretinoin even or
Mhm.
alpha hydroxys, right? Like they're very irritating and you have to be super careful in the sun. But
Yeah.
this is something that you can use that is not non-irritating, and is actually going to help protect from the damaging effects of the sun.
So I don't personally use retin-A or the hydroquinone. I can never pronounce it.
Yeah.
I don't, because I saw what that directly did to liver numbers with me. So I'm
Yeah.
sensitive to that stuff. And I don't, and what I was using on my face was I was using, I go through different regimens trying to figure this out. I
Yep.
was using a topical peptide, which I love. And I was
Yep.
using estriol cream until I started getting brown spots from that. And I'm like, nope, because some people, if you're
Melasma. Yeah.
melasma. So it's like, as soon as I correlated that, I'm like, nope, not using
Yep.
estriol cream anymore. So I've now started using this, and I had questions about that. Like, do you just use it right after you wash your face? Is there a specific order? Like, how do you want to best use it?
So we have 3 different products, and
okay, I have the serum right now.
Okay,
that's the one.
Perfect. Yep. So the serum's usually like what most people use because it plays nice with everything else. So if like you already have like a skin regimen that like you love, but you just want to like integrate something to up level, I think serum's perfect for that. So all 3 of the products though have 1% urolithin A. So that's the effective like powerhouse, no pun intended, powerhouse of the cell, but that's really like the powerhouse dosing is of this 1%. So the serum is like a lovely, like lightweight, like soaks in really easily. So I think with like any of your skincare products, the way that's best to use them, if you're using multiple serums, is like the lightest, most like liquid, like water-like. You apply that first and you go up in thickness. So like I also use vitamin C, and that's a water-based. So I use my vitamin C first, then I use my urolithin A cream, and then a serum, and then I have used the urolithin A day cream as well.
Makes sense.
So that's kind of how.
And then you'll put your sunblock if you do sun stuff after.
And makeup over that, yeah. Or like if it's nighttime, obviously you put your night cream over that. So so it really just depends what else you're using. But yes, you would apply it to clean skin. I like to use the serum day and night. The thing about our products is we also integrated in there some other really important actives, so it can replace a lot of things. So for example, there's some peptides in both the serum and in the day cream. So you don't necessarily need another peptide serum. There is niacinamide, which is really like a gold standard in terms of skincare health, and some antioxidants in there as well. So you can, which I've actually noticed, I'm like a skincare junkie. So like I used to always say, like, if I wasn't a dietitian, I'd probably be like an esthetician. Like I love skincare.
Well, you could
so
be with
much.
Your skin. If you
Thank you.
You're a walking billboard for it.
Thank you. As I started using this and like things like I had like a peptide serum and I was like, because this stuff's not cheap, right? Like you're like, I'm like, I just gotta go buy another peptide serum and that's like $100. Do I really need it? And I stopped using it and I was like, my skin still looks good. Okay, I'm not gonna use that. And then I had like another thing that so it's really replaced a lot of
wow,
which
good to know.
At nighttime particularly is
because we want to simplify. There's like 100 steps. Some people there was a time I had like 100 steps at night. I try to simplify.
Yeah, I'm totally with you. So it's really been able to replace a lot of things. And I think I appreciate you saying that. Like, I think my skin, I've been really, really happy with how it looks since I've been using the products.
So for those of you listening, I bring a lot of different concepts onto the show, and I consider myself a wacky health detective. I love going deep, Jennifer, and I'm always up leveling like what I'm learning. And I experiment on myself, but I just want to share with my audience like what I've really been in this mitochondria rabbit hole. This is like a legit thing I've been diving into ever since I saw that on my DNA. And I was so curious why NAD was doing that to me. So I've been going now. It's the same way I obsessed over gut health for a good year. So what I'm personally doing to improve my mitochondria health, especially after seeing my DNA, which kind of freaked me out about it, and because I have dementia in my family and all of that, is I do all the regular things you're saying. I definitely pay attention to the nutrition and the workouts, and I do modified fasting, meaning I'm not an extreme faster by any means, but I do stretch between meals a lot longer, and I do a 12.5 window at night. The other thing I personally have added red light and sauna, infrared sauna. I alternate. So one morning I'll do just the red lights. The other day I'll do my infrared sauna. I've added in MitoPure. This is something I've definitely added in, and I'm paying attention to that. And I'll be tracking how that's going. And I'm just really aware of that. And I'm not doing the hardcore repair stuff. Like not repair. I guess it's the adding, as I learned from you. If we don't feel good with something, I think we need to listen to that. And so I know many of you love NAD, and that's great for you. But if you're someone who's tried it, I've tried it all the ways. I've done the IV, I've done the injection, I've done the swallow. None of it feels good to me. None of it. So I listen to my body. I figure My hypothesis, again, not backed by science, not backed by Jennifer. My hypothesis is if you have not great mitochondria and you keep trying to add new, it's like eating a bunch of French fries and chocolate and then trying to add a salad on top. It's just not that, you won't feel good. So I think that's what's happening with that. My hypothesis, but I love this. And I'm going to tell all of you, I always share when I find something I love, this is what I'm doing. So if you want to try this also, Timeline is offering 10% off your order of MitoPure. So you can totally try it. And all you have to do is go to timeline.com/Natalie Jill. So that's Timeline, Timeline, timeline.com/Natalie Jill. And that's how you'll get 10% off to try. I command you all to try it. I want everyone to try it.
Yeah, no, it's been, I mean, it's just such a powerful, like the skin and the nutrition, like they're just really like, they're so gentle, but so powerful. It's just, I think it's something that people should try.
Any other fun tips you have for us? Because you are a midlife woman, you've been in the nutrition game for a long time. You've seen it all come. Like, what do you want to like? What do you wish you could just tell every midlife woman?
Oh gosh, I think
open forum here.
But
like, what's changed with you about nutrition? What's changed? Like, what do you want them all to know?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I think for me, like what I is like to just like not take everything so seriously. You know, I think there was like a time where I was like, you know, stressing out about like every little thing that I like put in my body, every little thing that I did. And like, I don't know, I just really embraced sort of like, I don't know if it's like the 80-20 or like 90-10 rule, but like you have to be diligent about your health, right? But like I've started to see this like more and more. I was just like working with a woman yesterday who I just think like has like severe food anxiety in like today's like world of social media. Like she's just like doesn't know what to eat anymore. She's so stressed out. Like she's not eating with her family anymore. Like life is too short to be too stressed. Like if like to your point of like if something doesn't feel good in your body, like if like you're losing your mind over what to eat, like that is not doing you any bit of good, right? And so it's just really being in tune to yourself, not taking everything so seriously, and like finding that balance of like the things that make you feel amazing and feel alive, and the things that are just sort of like the baseline, like this is what you need to do for your good health.
I love that advice. And I know because you're close to my age, like we saw all the trends, you know, like we grew up 70s and 80s with like, you can pinch an inch and it's like all the artificial sweeteners and the massive fad dieting and the counting every calorie. And I like that you said at the beginning, you're not a fan of calorie counting because you're rare with me. Like I do not love calorie counting at all. So I love that you shared that as well.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I just, you know, it's like I try to watch like my protein, my fiber, my like vegetables. Like I try to count those things and, you know, stay away from counting all the other things.
So good. Thank you so much for being here, Jennifer. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.